We want to turn to another important story. We'd spoken to you, I think, a couple months ago now, or I don't even know how long it was, but about the Assembly Bill 715 in California, major threats to free speech, especially those speaking out against the genocide in Gaza and the oppression of the Palestinian people. But now, thankfully, maybe I'm editorializing, but I am certainly thankful for it. The American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, ADC, is taking the governor to court over this assembly bill, and we are very, very happy to be joined to hear more about this by Jenin Younes, who is the National Legal Director at ADC. Jenin, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you with us. And maybe just to start, for those who have not heard, I mean, what is this assembly bill? What does it do, and why is it so dangerous?
Well, that's actually one of the big questions. I'm kind of kidding. But so the bill itself ostensibly seeks to buttress anti-discrimination protections, especially for Jewish students. It's a response to supposedly rising anti-Semitism. As many people probably know, the statistics on which this is based are from the Anti-Defamation League, which notoriously conflates anti-Semitism and anti-Zionist or anti-Israel speech. So it's questionable the degree to which the basis for the lawsuit is even, or sorry, the law is even accurate. But one of the key flaws, and this is something we make a huge point about, is that the law actually doesn't define anti-Semitism. And that's a pretty glaring omission, given that that's what the bill is trying to fix. And you can't deny the fact that what anti-Semitism is hotly debated in this country, to say the least. There are lots of Zionist groups, pro-Israel groups, who claim that criticism of Israel or Zionism is anti-Semitism. They're inextricably intertwined. And there have been a number of court decisions coming down on both sides of this issue in the last few months. So not defining that is a major flaw with the bill, and that's one of our main arguments, is that people can't know what's prohibited. There's a doctrine called void for vagueness doctrine that says laws must be clear about what they prohibit so that people can follow them. Otherwise, they can't conform their conduct to the law, and it leads to arbitrary and discriminatory enforcement. The other problem is that not only does it not directly define it, but it outsources the definition to this Biden white paper called the Strategy for Combating Anti-Semitism. And that white paper doesn't explicitly define anti-Semitism either, but it draws a number of examples that include criticism of Israel, and it also refers to the IHRA definition as the most prominent without explicitly adopting it. So our argument is basically that the law is vague in what it prohibits, but gives people the impression that criticizing Israel or Zionism could land them in trouble under the law. And so it has a chilling effect, and will make teachers and students fearful of discussing topics related to Israel, Palestine, Zionism in schools, in classrooms.
Mm.
You're reminding me of the fact that it only goes one way, a law like this. I'm just thinking I have a niece who was talking about how one of her teachers had said, in the middle of class, started talking about how his favorite trip ever was a trip to Israel on Birthright. And going on. And if anybody has the opportunity, they should go. And I imagine, that wouldn't be something that you're not allowed to say, of course. This is really just about suppressing speech related to the genocide in Gaza and the horrific treatment of Palestinians and the fact that our tax dollars are supporting it. But I guess I want to ask you about what an impact. First of all, it's amazing this is happening in California, where Gavin Newsom has really tried to frame himself as this leading figure against Donald Trump and his tyranny and his authoritarianism and his attempt to censor free speech. Meanwhile, he's in charge of California and pushing this, and that's why you have to sue him. But on that note, what would a bill like this mean for teachers, specifically Arab, Muslim, or Palestinian educators who just want to talk about current events or history honestly in their classrooms?
Well, so it obviously has a strong deterrent effect because people will be afraid that it'll land them in trouble. And actually, a couple of our plaintiffs, so we have about 10 plaintiffs, they're both students and teachers, because they have sort of different First Amendment rights. And so we wanted to include all of the arguments. A couple of the teachers have actually been disciplined in the past. One of them, in response to a student's question about colonialism in Israel, or in Palestine, said that there were Israeli settlements, Jewish settlements in Palestine, and that was an indicator of colonialism, and that got her an investigation. Another teacher showed a video of an 87-year-old Holocaust survivor saying that she was ashamed of Israel's actions. And a parent group complained, and she was initially actually vindicated. But after AB 715 was introduced in the legislature, they sort of re-upped the investigation, and she was then censored, sort of reprimanded, and suffered some disciplinary consequences. So we're arguing that, it's already bad, and this law is going to make it even worse. So, and the second teacher that I mentioned, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Well, I know I want to hear about the second teacher, but I also wanted to add on to that. What you're talking about is so important. I want to remind everyone this is happening in like the largest state in the country, California. And if it does stand, this could have a chilling effect and be implemented across the country. But please continue about the second teacher you were talking about.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, she's fairly certain that this happened because the bill was floating around and the parent groups felt emboldened. And they actually took credit for getting her in trouble on Facebook. Stand With Us said, success, we got the teacher in trouble for showing this video. And I mean, ironically, they were claiming that the video blamed all Jews for what was happening in Gaza, whereas she was trying to make the opposite point, that this is a Jewish Holocaust survivor who's condemning it, and not all Jews are responsible for what's happening in Gaza. So the way things are twisted to discipline teachers it's already having a severe chilling effect, and this law will make it worse. It's technically supposed to go into effect January 1st, but the language of the law is actually sort of unclear and says it should be implemented as soon as possible. So it's possible that districts are already making changes to accommodate it.
Yeah, amazing. Great point you made there, Rania. I think 1 in 8 of all K through 12 students in the country are in California, so huge impact here. And it feels that there's just a slippery slope aspect to this as well, because obviously, it's politicizing speech in a way that, if they succeed here with this sort of, push, that on many different fronts, you could see similar sorts of things. And the next time you turn around, you can't say anything.
Yeah, there already are other states that have similar laws. They just haven't gotten much attention. So a lot have sort of quietly adopted the IHRA definition, actually, when it comes to enforcing civil rights law. So it's already a big problem. Wisconsin is looking at a similar but worse law. And California sort of tends to be the laboratory. A lot of states will look to see what happens in California. And then if this law doesn't get struck down, then they may seek to emulate it. So I think the case is important, and we're hoping we can stop the law in its tracks before it even takes effect.
Well, in that note, I want to ask you about the legal case and as it stands, because I'm curious, what are the key legal arguments in terms of, violating constitutional protections, particularly around the First Amendment and equal protection? And what is the ADC asking the court to do? What would it mean if the court grants your request to block the law from taking effect?
So the arguments that the lawsuit raises are, the first one, which I discussed, was void for vagueness doctrine. So that says the law is so vague that nobody can be sure what it means to violate it, and so you can't conform your conduct. That's a problem. Then we have the First Amendment rights of the teachers and the students, actually. So there's a First Amendment corollary to the right to speak, which is the right to receive information. And actually, it's a little bit stronger for students than it is for teachers. Courts are somewhat understandably skeptical, or they don't really grant teachers full First Amendment rights. And I can sort of understand the basis for that, right? They're sympathetic to the idea that there can be limitations placed on teachers' ability to just go into the classroom and sort of air their own political views and make things about their ideas. And you can see it, from the other point of view. If you have a Zionist teacher or, pro-Israel teacher, I wouldn't want that kid going into the classroom and just preaching pro-Israel content to my child either. So there are, some sort of restrictions on the degree to which teachers have First Amendment protections. They're more limited, but students should be able to engage in robust discussions, and teachers should be able to respond to their questions. So that's why we raised the First Amendment rights of both teachers and students. And I think, so while there are limitations that can be based on curricula, what I think the courts are not sympathetic to is the idea that one viewpoint can be forbidden while the other one is permitted. And so this law is viewpoint discriminatory. That's what we're arguing. So I think it might be fair to say teachers have to give air to both views, say that some people think this, some people think that. But to say you can only air the pro-Israel view is a problem. And so that's sort of the basis for the lawsuit. And what we're actually asking for emergency relief. So there's currently a hearing scheduled for the 16th of December. These things sometimes change, but currently. And we're asking for sort of what's called a preliminary injunction, which is for a judge to enjoin the law. So tell Newsom and his agents and officers that they cannot enforce this law, and it's basically not in effect. And then we go through the whole lawsuit, and then we want a permanent injunction at the end. So we're not seeking money or anything like that, just don't want the law to be in effect.
Mm-hmm. And Jenin, for those who might be watching who want to continue to follow the efforts of ADC, and if they so choose, support your efforts, is there anywhere they should look, anywhere they should go?
Yes, you can go to our website. It's adc.org. And if you would like to support us, we have a donate button. We're survive on grassroots funding, so we very much appreciate any help we can get.
Mm-hmm. Longtime venerable civil rights organization defending free speech and many other things. Jenin Younes, National Legal Director at ADC. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Freedom Side.
Thank you for having me.